Yo, everybody, welcome to the first episode of my new show, NP, where we'll feature the most legendary artists and what we feel are the most important drops in the space. Today, we have my super homie, my art mentor, and my one of my closest friends, Pindar Van Arman, and Ezra from Sovereign, who's been with Pindar for a lot of the journey and is going to be here to help discuss this amazing drop. So, Reflection is already going to be the second largest drop in terms of ETH this year. And I think in a time when AI and Gen Art is the focus, we're seeing some really great, success of some of the top artists like Pindar and Claire. And I think this is a really exciting time. My journey with Pindar is actually interesting. I came to learn about Pindar through Super Rare Pass and his amazing drop decoherence, which at first I didn't understand and was like, wait a minute, I can't see this on the screen. I stupidly sold it and then watched it triple and learned about Pindar in the meantime. Decoherence was actually by far the most successful drop of Rare Pass, and it really showed me, once I started digging in and understood what Pindar is doing, which we'll explore today, why Pindar is simply in a class all his own, in my opinion. And so, Ezra, why don't you introduce yourself and your relationship with this lovely friend of ours and artist?
Right on. I'm on the Sovereign team, and I first met Pindar in the Nouns Discord when he made a noun GAN study, and then that was sort of like I didn't know it at the time, but that was like a really important transitional moment for Pindar, because before that he had done just one of ones on Super Rare with his robots, and like that was sort of a moment of sort of meeting the dynamics of the changes in the space, and like that was what became Bitcans, and like that's to point out one of the things that I find really really interesting about the way Pindar operates is like he uses it like all of the whole canvas of activity as medium, like including the social aspect, which is like with Bitcans and bigger collections like ByteGANs, they become they develop a social aspect, and then through that I met the people who have become really my very best friends in the space through there, like people who came together through interest in what he was doing, and for the last years those have been my closest people in the space, and
Yeah, he's amazing at communities too.
Yeah, and I mean, but and in a way too that is really like that highlights what's underlying the art, like that brings people together who are like genuinely interested in the things that he's reaching for, like people who are reaching for these same things, and it's quite it's hard to
Yeah, no, for sure. That's amazing. I think you're right. He's great at kind of bringing the community and bringing communities together. Pindar, why don't we start the story? Thank you, Ezra. And I think Sovereign it's you and Pindar and who else?
Justin Highland, who
Right.
is the developer that
and you guys facilitated a lot of artists dropping independently on their own.
Yeah.
We've had, I think 15 now. We've sold them. We're lucky we've sold them all out so far. We're
That's the way. So sorry, there was a bit of Ezra. No, I did. I apologize. That's screen.
That was the end of the Sovereign thing. Sovereign it's like an indie drop studio. It's a small team, and we basically just do drops when we find something that's really good. Like we don't do like super high frequency, and this one is like one of the coolest and like most fascinating projects we've done.
Yeah, and we definitely have to give a shout out to Justin Highlands. Everyone knows him as Higgs Valley, because he crushed this contract. him and I designed it, and then I didn't, I can't. I don't want to say too much about it, but I am like really impressed with it. It's 4 different contracts playing or writing with each other. It's just beautiful. So, it's like he just made the beautiful canvas that this art is like sitting on. And I'm really appreciative of that.
Well, we can't wait to dig in. So, Pindar, quickly, what was the moment looking back so that we can put in context how important this drop is? Let's start at the beginning. What many artists I've had the pleasure of speaking to have a moment where either in hindsight or at the time they realized like that was the moment they realized they were either going to be an artist or they were going to make art, that they were like, oh shit, I have to make art. When do you have any kind of specific memory or any story you can share with the viewers today about what was that like moment that got Pindar Van Arman to go into art?
Yeah, gosh, it's a good one. A couple of them. One is that was the one way to impress my mom, do an awesome drawing. And I mean, now I look back, it was all malarkey. She was all like, no matter what I drew, she was, oh, that's great. That's great. So it was always me trying to draw horses and hands because she said those were the hardest things to draw, and it really impressed her. And she went to art school and she wanted to be an artist, and she went into interior design. So it was like, taking after her interior design art dreams. And when I impressed her, I felt like I was impressing the world. And then that's the big one. That's the youngest one. And then high school, had a hard time, like most artists, like in high school, not fitting in. I had lots of friends, but I had a hard time just like I went to a really conservative Catholic high school, like a couple blocks from the Capitol in Washington, D.C. And it was just way too conservative for me. Like I was one of the only students with long hair and constantly harassed by the whatever. It wasn't that bad, but it was an outsider feeling. And then when I did art, it was always the best, like to the point that the headmaster would even like pull me aside and tell me like, this is it, stick with it. So it became this identity in high school that like I could be weird as long as my art was good. And it would impress the headmaster, who was the most crotchety. Well, I began to like him because he liked my art, but he was very strict and very like, old fashioned. So those are 2 things that got me on the track.
And in 2006, you started with AI and 2008 robotics. Yeah. What brought you from art generally into AI and robotics?
Okay, so 2000s, I don't know if the .coms were happening. I got a job as a graphic designer, and I just noticed all my friends at the company were buying houses and cars. And I went to my boss and was like, hey, how can I buy a house or car? I'm making this graphic designer salary. And he goes, it's easy, just become a programmer. And I think he meant it as a joke, but I was like, okay, if that's what it takes to make a lot of money. So I became a programmer, and it was actually surprisingly easy because I'm like introverted. So like sitting in front of a computer solving problems led to 5 years of doing some awesome programming. In like 2005, 2006, there was this thing called the DARPA Grand Challenge where they had this contest, DARPA, make a self-driving car. And so I joined this local team that was building a self-driving car, and we made this awesome self-driving car. It drove 82 miles by itself before slamming into a tree. But those 82 miles, it was in first place. And we lost out to Stanford, of all jerks, and CMU. Yeah, so it's hard to compete with CMU and Stanford. I think they had like a $2.5 million budget each, and we had like 130,000. So that got me into AI. Okay, so why art then? After that remarkable failure, because it was one of the best times of my life, we're out in the desert in California and Nevada, racing cars that were self-driving. I wanted to keep on doing it because the AI was awesome, but I didn't have the resources to do a car. So I was like, what can I do? And I realized I painted a lot. And I was like, I can make a little robot to help me paint. And so I built my first robot within months of finishing the car project. And then every 6 months or every couple of months, I just make it a little better. Like, the first robot just connected dots. I would give it dots and would take a paintbrush, dip it in the paint, connect dots. And then I was like, what I can do to fill? And then I programmed that. And I was like, wait a minute, what I want to give it a GIF, turn that GIF into 6 colors using K-means clustering, which is an AI algorithm I found, and can it like paint? And then, so it's just got better and better and better every 6 months. And then fast forward to around 2010, which I made the big advance. Tell me if I'm going into too much detail, but I love talking about this. 2010 was the best advances. Like I went to work one day and left it painting a painting. And I was selling these paintings all on eBay. And I came home and the robot was still painting, but the painting was half done. At some point, for some reason, the paintbrush popped off. But it was like a dumb printer. It was still painting, as if, it would take this empty robot arm to the thing, dip it in paint, but there's no brush, and and I was like, God, this is dumb. It should be smarter than this. It should be watching what it's doing. And after that, I built a camera, and I was like, from now on, I'm going to have it watch the canvas. And instead of being a printer where you give it commands and it prints, and even if it runs out of ink, it still gives you this print. This robot will try and paint that canvas depending on what it sees on the canvas.
Had other people done this at this point? Was this
no, it was cool.
So you come home, you see that empty, and you're like, okay. So then you get a camera, and then how are you okay, what did you literally do, code-wise, to make it? Was there an existing language? Was it from the AI relaying, in the car? How did you know how to take the camera and make the robot do shit?
It was all my custom code, all my code. That's sort of my thing. That was the fun part of it. And it was a simple algorithm. The simple algorithm was it had a picture in its mind, its memory, and it would take that picture and take a photo of the canvas, and it would compare the pictures, and it would measure pixel by pixel what the difference was. And if there was a high difference, the canvas was white and it needed to be black, it'd be like, that's there's the difference between the canvas value and this pixel value in my memory is 255 because it's white to black. And that's I'm going to go paint black there. And it just slowly removes the error, really simple algorithm, but really good. And you asked if I was the first. I don't know if I was the first. Whenever I think I'm the first, when I built my first robot, I thought I was the first. And I found out about Harold Cohen 30 years earlier had built painting robots. So I don't know if I was the first, but I was with.
Why don't you give the quick story of you and Harold that I think both Ezra and I love?
Okay. So one thing I learned in college was it's cool to cold call other artists because we're friendly. Just cold call it. If you're an artist in college, give me a call. I always take a call from an artist in college. And so I cold called Harold Cohen one day just to talk to him about the painting robots and told him about mine. And I thought I was irritating him, but he wouldn't get off the phone. And then this just turned into constant talks and emails. And he slowly became the closest thing I've ever had to a mentor in the space. And it was funny because, I was telling him AI is the way and AI is coming. And he was very, very suspicious of AI and actually kind of angry that people were saying stuff was AI. And so it was always these very spirited conversations. And I don't know if this is the part of the story you like, but it was always very spirited conversations. And then one time he got really angry because I was talking about GANs. And I was like, no, they're not filters. I was telling him about how they're actually they're patterns. The AI looks for patterns and repeats the patterns. And he was telling me it's a filter. It's just another filter where you start with an image and end up with a transformed image. And then that ended our conversation. And I didn't hear from him again for weeks and months. And this was right around the time my TEDx talk, and he helped me write it. And so I thought, gosh, I finally pissed him off too much. But then, this bittersweet story about it is, as you guys can probably figure out, is I then got an email from an assistant responding to an email I had sent him and say, hey, listen, Harold Cohen couldn't get back to you this because he finally succumbed to a sickness. And I realized, it's a bittersweet moment because I realized he had died. But at the same time, I realized he wasn't mad at me. That's not why he didn't call me. He didn't call me because he died.
I know.
So it was relief and sadness.
Yeah. The connection point that I find kind of interesting with Harold Cohen and reflection is he did constantly talk about the limits of what his machine systems could do, or what machine systems could do.
Yeah.
And about the misperceptions about agency, machines having agency. And constantly writing about the limits of the deterministic systems. And that's a way that reflection is kind of a direct response to those limits he was talking about. To me, because it's there are really interesting ways that it introduces like a raw emergence, or like raw generation, and then like kind of pushes past the boundary of like just determinism and just iteration. I mean, in a way, like that is kind of strikes me as like it's like a planting a seed for ways for that not just robotic art can do that, but that the generative art can do that. And I wonder what would he have thought, like to see what, I mean, we have no idea. That's kind of a silly thing.
We have no idea. But I mean, but like, he is so influential on me that he kept me out of a bunch of pitfalls. One of the pitfalls was ever claiming agency for one of my robots.
Right.
Like, a lot of people are doing this constantly. They're saying my robot made the first, or my AI is the first AI art made by AI, right? And the problem is no human can make that claim, because, as he once pointed out to me, is like, AI will make that claim when AI does it. And if there's a human making the claim, that's not AI, because you have to be a person to make a piece of art. If you go to the traditional traditions, art's is an artifact made by a human to convey something. So that kept me honest, kept me straight.
Is that really? I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah, the first AI art is going to be made by AI. No human will be able to claim that.
Right. It won't be like a person saying like, "This is my AI." That is an independent agent.
Yeah, right.
Be the AI saying like,
this has been a theme that's interesting. Yeah, and Ezra, we've talked about this with Pindar, but so going back to your work, I mean, you won this award in 2018 and beat out Google and a bunch of, I guess you must have beaten Stanford too this time. If you look back at your work, starting from what's the certificate? I'm so bad at names, but Certificate of Authenticity, is that the one you recently released? Which was the original pre-AI imagined face.
Yeah. The first sparks of artificial creativity.
Yeah. So I think what I'd love to do is, so Ezra was touching on a really interesting point, which is like how much of AI is deterministic. And we've all talked about, what does the AI process offline? We've talked about this, but I'd like to bring it here. What is the AI process? Why is it interesting for us to see how the art emerges? And what does that tell us about ourselves and our own creative process? So I'd like to snapshot back to what I'd call this, and not to put words in your mouth, but I think like if you look at this evolution of you making these, using robots and different AI to paint these sort of emergent faces, and you start all the way back with the work in 2017, 2018, then AI imagined faces, which to me is sort of somewhat of a precursor, and now this project. Can you walk us through where you were in 2018 and how you thought about, because you've talked about what did AI mean to you and this work, and how does where we are today like mean to you in the context of this long career you've had? You've been doing this almost 20 years. Yeah. And so that's as old as some of our viewers, I bet, And so tell us, like, when you look at, as Ezra said, you came up under an incredibly important figure, and you have a lot of perspective on the trad art space. So what excites you about where what you've been able to accomplish in this? And then we can talk a bit about why it's exciting for the space as well. But I'd love to understand how this reflection fits into this history, this incredible history that you have shared with us.
First, I got to give, tip my hat to Ezra. A reflection, him and I were talking about titles. And one of the coolest things, all you artists working with Sovereign, I work with Ezra on this project, like all the artists do. And he just really focused it, because I used to have these nerdy, I'd go there and say, this is important because it uses feedback loops to take a photo of the canvas, and this is the error reduction. And then I was like, and it does like K-means clustering to blah, blah. And the audience is asleep. And then Ezra just said, this is all about reflection. And I'll give you credit for that, Ezra. This is like a reflection on so many levels. The robot is reflecting on what it's creating and making adjustments as it's painting.
Why don't you give us a 2-minute summary of what this actual system that you're calling reflective AI is, and then let's go into the title so people understand the actual technology. That's perfect, because you're right.
So generative art as we know it, we'll start with generative art as you know and how reflective AI is different. Generative art as we know it is, an artist makes an algorithm and gets a seed, and then they use that to make all these different outputs. Think of everything on art blocks. But it's kind of blind. It's like it takes the seed and just calculates mathematics, pure math. Reflective AI is asking us questions like, why don't we have some, stopping points where we take a look at the art that's being made and analyze it, and then make the next decision based on what's emerging. And so, as Ezra's calling this emergent creative principle, is like my robot will paint a little, and then I'll take a photo of the canvas. It's like, what do I got going on here? And then I'll use that as inputs for the next layer of
like an artist.
Exactly. Paul Clay described it as the creative feedback loops. He said an artist makes a mark, takes a step back, looks at the mark, and decides what the next mark is. And that's Paul Clay all the way back, almost 70, 60 years ago. Not great with math, but a long time ago. And so this is reflective AI is like, generative art is great, and we've gone so deep in generative art, and we've explored it. And like the next step of generative art is generative art that's aware of itself, and that judges itself and changes direction based on how it's being generated. And so why is this possible now? Because AI is possible now. And AI has been possible good AI has been possible for about the last 5 years. Like you mentioned, I've been doing AI since 2006, but the neural nets really took off around 2017, 2018. That's when the GPUs from NVIDIA, I'll plug NVIDIA because I love them, got powerful enough to actually work. And so that's what reflective AI is. It's generative art that improves itself depending on how well it's coming out.
Well, to interject there too, it's like because the reflective process and and also like this distinction between like agency and like what is like what is the difference between like decision making and agency, and like what is the difference between like agency and creativity, because that I find super interesting. Like artificial intelligence, there can be intelligence without agency, and like this like artificial creativity can also exist. So like what in that regard, like how do you describe that? And like
it's good, and made me think of Harold Cohen again. Like I finally got Harold Cohen to agree that machines could be creative but not artists. So and what I think by that is
Go.
And that's been what I've been saying for years. Is like like AI is creative.
What does that mean? How's it? Because it's not picking on its own what to do. Why is it not an artist? If it's being creative, help me understand. So you saying because, and this is what Ezra, I can tell you both were like nouns too, because I always used to say like nouns is like the super smart, like ivory tower, and I love this shit. I'm a nerd. So help me understand. It requires agency to be an artist. If we go back, Pindar, you gave me, which Bats put up yesterday too, which I agree, is like art is anything an artist says is art.
Yeah.
So I guess under that definition, going back, technically it can't be art because there's not an artist saying it's art, because if you're not the AI, you're not the artist. So you can have creativity and not be an artist. Is that?
Yeah, I don't want to.
It goes back to the whole thing. And this is why I loved your title suggestion and why we went with reflection is all of the algorithms, and there's dozens of algorithms in my robots, are me reflecting on why I made a creative decision. So like, I'll have something that like looks kind of blah, and I'm like, I'll look at it as a human. I'm like, it needs more contrast. I was like, okay, I looked at this and decided I need more contrast. And that was a creative decision, right? But I was like, how can I program my robot to add more contrast? So I wrote a program that measures the contrast on a composition and says there's no contrast here, add contrast. So that's me codifying.
I started getting what makes good art. Like good art must have this much contrast. Good art must have visually aesthetic art must have this much saturation. Visually,
or like you and I have discussed OG good art. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Go. Oh, what we've discussed, OG, like when we're talking about your art, good art has complementary colors.
Yeah.
Your art's killing it recently because you've zeroed in on the complementary colors.
You're my mentor, so it's
So with this observation, I noticed that with some mine. I was like, okay, I got to add I got to focus on complementary colors. So as the canvas is building up and it's choosing colors, at some point it might check if there's complementary colors. And it's like, nope, not enough contrast here in the complementary colors, not enough like, visual things going on. And I'll add complementary colors. Another creative decision that can be coded. And so these are the creative decisions that artists make all the time. And it's totally, and I reflect on them. This is what I love about the many layers of the title. I reflect on my own creative decisions and try and find a way to codify it, teach it to the robot, and the robot in turn becomes creative.
Yeah. I mean, what trips me out about it so much is like, you have all these algorithms together, like, I don't know like 20 of them.
Yeah. How many together?
24, but it goes up and down by 1 or 2 all the time. I kill some and add some all the time, but around 2 dozen.
Yeah, so this set of algorithms, and then like what trips me out is like comparing it to like all the modes of thought in a person's mind, like, and like when a person is in a creative process, they have like, well, obviously more than 20 modes, like for a person, but like it's like this set of like of kinds of thinking, like it's just wild that like it's kind of a seed of like a synthesized thought process, a synthesized creative thought, and like obviously like very rudimentary version of it. Like a human being is like much more complex, but it's like it's a seed that I haven't seen before, really. And like in doing this, I also did a bunch of research into what other people are doing with these kind of systems. And it's like, and as far as I have seen from anybody, like there isn't another
that's what I was going to ask. I have not seen, most people are using like trained AI, which is now getting more accessible, using a variety of diffusion models, then adjusting outputs. I don't, maybe writing, then there's like you said, pure code driven. I don't know of anybody using a system. I'm not aware.
Yeah.
I mean,
you guys,
there's parallel things, like there's things that are like sort of like in parallel that are like close, but it's like most of the thing. Sorry, but it's like all of the projects in that vein are academic projects,
right? So
what? They're trying to perfectly reproduce like already existing paintings, basically.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I read about one in 1996, an academic. So it's not new and novel, and I'm never the first at anything, but I always try and be the best. But like there's this really good robot called David. Everyone can look it up. That that appeared on the scene around 2010. And that's actually one of my favorite memories, because they wrote a paper on how David worked, and they cited me. And I was like, oh, they recognized it. And they cited me as because they thought the novelty was there's a camera on David that watches the canvas get it painted. And so they do the same thing. They're like, not unlike, they got my name wrong. They called me Arman, which is common, but I'll take it. And then so there are other people doing it. Yeah.
I didn't hear that paper, the David paper, but it's like what struck me as like different. Like, so David is the closest example probably, but what's like the significantly different is that like the people on the David team look at like unpredictable results, or like kind of like chaotic results that you get with physical material. They look at as mistakes because they're trying to make like a perfect like reproduction kind of, But like in the reflection process, like those kind of unpredictable things that happen with the physical material, like become input that breaks the determinism of the process. And it's like, to me, it's like a window. Like it's a window that to me is the window.
It's an exogenous random variable that's introduced.
Yeah, remember Bob Ross? There's no such thing, happy accidents. Happy accidents are programmed into the system. I use intentionally runny paint because, and look, I paint. You can see them back behind me. I painted a 45-degree angle because I want that paint to run, and I want that to add to the chaos. There's a little chaos theory going in there. If I wanted it to be a perfect reproduction, like actually, I have a gorgeous portrait of my son back there, right? That's a pretty good reproduction. I can turn the chaos off, but I like the chaos. And I think the chaos is where the creativity is emergent. And so,
no, I mean, about the chaos, this is like also super interesting in the way that the overall relates to generative art, like as a whole, like including the 2D algorithmic generative art. And like, I don't know, like I sense, and I hear, I mean, just from hearing a lot of people saying it, that there's like kind of, people feel like, I don't know, it's silly too, because it's just in blockchain, but like that there's like kind of hitting a wall with what's coming out of the generative art scene.
Obviously, people feel they're not seeing the same level of like original and variety that somehow that's what people are saying. I think that's a fair characterization.
But so I mean, it strikes me as like, if you're in a totally deterministic process, and if you're just like iterating from an algorithm, you're kind of in a closed sphere. And it's like you're in a room with no windows or doors. And like this is like what one of the things I love the most about reflection is that it like makes a crack in that closed sphere. And like through that crack, you can reach all the way through to like what is the source of emergence, like the source of creation. And it's just a small crack. But like the fact that like Pindar is like opening that as a direction is like to me like quite fascinating. And it doesn't, and I mean, I know we're talking a lot about robotic systems and that, but this is not something that just only applies to robotic systems. Like the reflective AI process you can apply it like to fully digitally too.
Yeah.
You can execute on a fully digital plane. And like the bulk of,
you'd introduce like a random exogenous variable.
Yeah, hit up a quantum computer. Hit up a quantum computer feed.
I mean, like, yeah, or like Operator did an interesting way with were introducing like dance into the and then having a final output that is the long form generative. I think that to me is like kind of one of the other closest parallels, because they have a physical set of source material that they make, and in this case it's the painting, like the robot, but like the bulk of this project is digital, actually, and like it's important because like most people probably who will maybe use reflective AI in the future will be doing it digitally. Like probably there are not many more people.
It's messy. It's hard. My robots always break.
100%. I mean, that's why it's so unique and interesting.
Yeah. But I'll tell you something else cool. Oh, first of all, here's the first alpha with a lot of alpha today. There they are. Those behind my head are the 9 canvases, and there's one really behind me that built up that the robots made, that built up the layers that are used to make reflection, the 999 that are going to come out in the long form. So there they are, and you'll get a closer look at them at NFT Paris. The other cool thing I love in Ezra and I is these are also graphs. These paintings are graphs because there's sort of this right brain, left brain duality going on, where I have some expressive AI and then I have some precise AI. Like imagine the one that measures contrast. That's precise AI. I have to have the perfect just math. Then you have the expressive AI, the stuff that's using diffusion models, that's using GANs. It's actually pretty close to emotional looking art, pretty close. Obviously it's not emotional, but it has emotionality. And that's the expressive part. Those algorithms are painted with a paintbrush. The precise algorithms are painted with a marker. So as you look at the canvas, you can see what the robot was doing. Was it being expressive or was it being precise? And I think that's a really neat detail about this.
As we finish up the show, what are some other super cool details? Like everything, how are the titles made? There's 10 trades with 10. We don't, but just generally we'll run a little longer than we expected. But I think let's get a bit more granular on one of the things I think I would say going in is this is not only the best conceptual stuff I've seen from you, but visually the most aesthetically pleasing. And I think it's not. Yeah, and I think I love your stuff, and I have all this evolution from the beginning. I also think, and this is me talking solely, when I looked at the time, I think there was 55 yesterday, the last time I looked. There is something unique in that these really like start forming into sets to me. Like I could imagine how like some other works, not that it's a PFP, it could be used as one, and I will see, but I think they're as I looked, some things screened where I was like, yo, maybe I'd want a set of monochromes or a set of, these are my name traits, number eyes. Or there was something where it looks like the Descartes, where there was books coming out the face, but it makes it look like Satan. And so, there's these emergent things. Like, to me, that's, you were saying, like, so I learned from tattoos, like the medium matters a lot. And here with Pindar, we not only have the contract medium, which he touched on earlier, and we didn't dig in as much, which if you think of Pindar, it's on-chain, it's robotics, it's AI, it's innovation, it's puzzles. But you have, I was thinking about tagline. I fucking lost my train of thought now.
One of the titles. Well, there are sets. So like one of the most obvious sets.
That's how the titles merge. So get into that for a minute and talk to us, because it seems to me this could attract a different set of holders approaching this collection different. Like when I had BitGans, you might get a mutated one, right?
Yeah.
So that was cool to get, but here you might want to be like, yo, I need to own 5 of these because like the monochromes, I want all of them in monochrome.
Well, the most obvious set is the 3, right? I mean the human
cyborg robot.
Robot set. I mean that's like the basis. Well, why don't you tell them?
Okay, I'll go. Okay, so everything revolves around Descartes for me. Like when I think of, and so like this is NFT Paris. So I was talking to them and like, what can we do? And I was like, like there's a lot of thinkers that I'm really impressed with are French. Why not do 9 portraits of French figures for NFT Paris? And right at the center is Descartes. And Descartes, not only is he like, I think, therefore I am, not only is he questioning what is consciousness, but also Cartesian graphs, which is how my robots run. So I just realized what a central figure Descartes is in my life. And so one of them was a portrait of him. Then I started looking at other ones. Like, I was thinking of doing Sartre, but he's kind of pretentious. So I went with Le Bouvier, like his and then there's Lametri. And then there's also like, I was once in an AI book where there was automatons, and Ezra reminded me that there's automatons. So I was like, we'll make a portrait of an automaton. So there's 3 portraits of religious, spiritual figures. There's 3 portraits of scientific figures. And then there's 3 portraits that are pretty much robots. And so those are the 3 layers. And everything goes from like free will to deterministic. And when you look at the traits, every one of them is on a scale. And it's about the scale, the spectrum of are we free will? When we act, is it free will or is it instinct? And then there's all these traits between free will and instinct. Is it, it's another traits are these 9 figures, these 9 historical figures that are portraits of. Others are like, is it random or is it deterministic? So the traits are all built around that. The most obvious is human, cyborg, robot.
How'd you get the titles?
Oh,
we read them.
Yeah.
Let me ask it the dumb way. Okay, when you mint mine and that titles comes up, how's it doing that? Like, is it picking between? How's it putting those words together?
We have 999 titles.
Oh, you just have full titles you already made and it selects one?
Yeah, we're not generating titles. Yeah, it's a lot of.
Okay. I thought the titles were like generated.
If they were generated, they'd be way worse.
Yeah,
What's that?
Okay. All right. Hey, anything else before we wrap up? One thing we are going to do. Right now, it's 11:41 a.m. my time, 2:41 p.m. Eastern. Pindar, do you want to announce what the great listeners might get for listening to us today?
Okay, you got to help me out with what the mechanics are. But there are this. Thank you, everyone. First of all, the response has been great, and we have this pre-sale, and there are 3 pre-sale slots left. Only 3. And I was just going to give it to listeners of the show.
If you drop your wallet now, so anyone who's dropping wallet, 2:41 p.m. on right now, the first 3.
Oh, wow. Well, there's a lot of action over on Twitter there.
Yeah, boom. The motherfucker's dancing now. Fucking cut and paste.
Don't put a street phrase in accidentally. Oh, no. Right. So and there's only one rule for this, is that first 3. I love it, OG. That's a great idea. The other thing is you do have a limited amount of time because we're closing everything up before the mint and we're going into this.
Okay, 1 hour to set. An hour?
12 hours from now. Because I never rush. You guys never. Security thing. If you see me post something, say, hey, 5 minutes to do this, never me. And most artists should never do that. I'll always give you plenty of time because other than putting your wallet down, yeah, you got
5 minutes to post your favorite picture of OG.
It's the kind of transaction I never rush. So let's say 12 hours, like by tomorrow morning.
Okay, so let's say by 2:45 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, complete the directions on.
Night, Pindar. You're
what's that? I didn't give them 24 hours. Let's give them 24 hours. But
isn't it? Okay, you're saying the 6th, 2:45 in the afternoon tomorrow.
Yeah. And then, so listen, I'll try and track you down.
Then what we'll do is, if you haven't sent the ETH by then, we'll take the next one, next until there's filled. And pre-sales are different than allow list.
Yeah, allow lists are first come, first serve Wednesday. And here, important security things. Only pay attention to the site we're going to announce it 2 hours before. Only pay attention to Van Arman and NFT Paris, the Twitter accounts. And even if you want to be safe, compare the two for security reasons. And also the other thing is there are a lot of Van Arman clones, like a lot of them. So
a lot of
just because it says Van Arman does not mean it's my Twitter account.
Scammers are out there.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
I wanted to close.
Yeah. Anything you guys? Yeah. Well, have we not? I mean, we went a bit longer, but I think it's been dope. Anything we haven't touched on?
I just wanted to say.
Yeah, hit me.
In the last years, I know from talking to Pindar, that there's always been a difficulty in getting people to understand what it is that he's doing, and this collection is a really perfect capsule of that. But also, I feel like it's a time now people do know a lot more about AI. It's a part of everybody's life. Everybody has an awareness of it and has learned a bit about how it works and what it means. People have become enormously more digital, exponentially in the last years. And I kind of feel like it's the moment that it can finally click on a larger scale, what this stuff is. Because I don't know, even for me, for the last 3 years, I guess, since we've known each other, I've seen it took me a while. It took me a year and a half before it really clicked what he was doing. And that, I really look forward to that. And I really think, Pindar, that it is a time when it's really a coalescence of what people are ready for and what the directions are that you're pointing in for it to
Thanks, Ezra. It's great.
Well, Ezra, I feel the exact same way, and I know both you and I. And I think that's a really fair thing to say. For listeners, I think some art is immediately accessible. You just look at, you're wow, some art isn't, and some art, like most things, the more you know, the more you can appreciate. And I think Pindar, like we talked about, he's always been making incredibly cool stuff. And I'd say historically, like you said, Ezra, there was a time where, in general, the average simp, myself included, wasn't ready.
Yeah,
but once, I think you're right, the conditions are prime for variety. Look, if you look at this week, the three top AI artists are having the biggest drops of the year by far. There's been a lot of attention. The market itself is focused on sort of the fewer, more big liquid artists. Pindar has been an incredible human being, and really, I think people have I think Decoherence was in some ways a breakout. Not that he hadn't already broken out, but for accessibility and the grand, people started to understand, wait a minute, there's something cool being done here. And people writing threads, and it's starting. So I think it started there, and people seeing Pindar's work ethic and how much he gave to that project and how good a human he was and being accessible. Then, like you said, his community building, some of his puzzles, people taking a year to solve, but still focused on them. And so I do think it's the right market moment. And I do think it's the right Pindar moment. And I think Pindar people are coming to meet Pindar, and Pindar's work is coming to meet them in the sense that it's more accessible. It's more visually appealing. It's more understandable. So I agree with you 1,000%. And I know both of us and I together right now and continue in the future, love Pindar and we're so happy to see his success and support it. So, Pindar, anything you want to say, or are you blushing?
I'm blushing now. So thank you guys. I love
I
it.
was thinking those comments. F you too, buddy. No, I'm just kidding. I still love you. All right. You guys, it's been wonderful. Thank you for being my first guest.
Thank you.
It's so exciting. And I think hopefully, look, it's impossible to get into all the elements in
No, it's not.
45 minutes, but I think we touched on it was dope, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, I love you guys. Can't wait. So Pindar, the drop is the 7th at
noon Eastern, 6 Europe time, CT.
6
that
CT.
right?
That's
Noon,
12 p.m. Eastern.
12
12
p.m.
p.m. Eastern in 2 days, Wednesday. All right, be ready. This shit's going to blow up. Thank you for joining us. Love you guys. And thanks to all the listeners. Excited for the winners. And we'll see you on the next legendary drop.
Thank you, Edgy.
Thanks, guys. And we out.